Hello everybody, welcome to Free Flight. Tonight we're going to be looking at what we call personal flight setup and personal flight logging. Winter time is traditionally a time when members can get a bit thin on the ground, particularly midweek, although it also applies at weekends. It equally applies in the summer when there's so much to do and so many aircraft to try and launch that everybody's scurrying around like crazy people, retrieving gliders off the field, etc. So what we've been trying to do is find a way of reducing, if not eliminating completely, the role of the duty clerk. Now, I know a lot of members, particularly at our club, might suddenly say, yippee, about bloody time too, because, let's face it guys, it's the most hated job in the club. Nobody likes to do the duty clerking. It's one thing that everybody runs a mile from if they possibly can, and usually it's given to the newest members of the club as a way of breaking them into club life. So that's why we're doing it. The caveat before we go any further is that you must have a mobile 4G signal at all the launch points on your airfield. If you haven't got that, then stop here, because personal flight setup isn't for you. And what you need to do first before you can start using it is actually switch it on, because although it's in the system, it is not switched on by default, so you have to do one or two things to get you going. So to switch it on, go to your usual place, which is in other login menus and club profile. And once you're in club profile, go to system settings and then go and hit the switches tab, and in there you'll see some new switches. One is personal flight setup, which you need to switch on. It will be off by default, and the other one, which I'm going to rename, says auto launch detect. That needs to be switched on if you want members to be able to launch and land themselves. It is not necessary if you just want to have them set their own flights up but retain a duty clerk. I've got them both switched on now, so that later on we can see how an individual pilot can launch themselves and land themselves, as well as set the flight up. The next thing you need to do is to actually enter the launch point coordinates for all of your launch points. Now I've got two here. One says not my house and the other one says my house. You need to do this for all the launch points. Now the caveat here is that if you have your airfield Wi-Fi'd up with a bounce back to the office and then from the office out onto the internet, you can't automatically do this, because the location data could put you miles away, because that's all relying on service providers' databases of the locations of all their access points. It's different on a mobile phone. It uses the mobile phone's GPS, so if you're on a 4G signal, you'll probably get good accurate data. But you can always collect the data from Google Maps, Google Earth, and manually put them in by hand. You just need the accurate longitude and latitude coordinates in decimal format for each of the launch points in use. So now, when the flying sheet is first started for the day, it's going to ask you for one other piece of information, and that is the launch point that you're operating from. And naturally, it goes without saying that if you have to change the launch point during the day, you're going to need to change the launch point location so that the mobile phones can detect where you are. And this is all part of the built-in security for the system, because if somebody tries to set a flight up and there's no flying sheet for the day, it will just tell them to clear off and come back later when there's a flying sheet in place. If they try to set up a flight from the comfort of their own home before coming to the club, equally it will tell them to clear off, because they are not on the airfield. So everything is geolocation based, and it needs to be accurate. So without further ado, I'm going to hop over to members admin and let's see how we set up our personal flights and also launch ourselves. So you'll see, in addition to all the other stuff that we've always been able to do, there are now 3 new options on the bottom. One is called set up a training flight, the other is set up a solo flight, and there is a third item, set up an intro flight. Now you need to know at this point that the third option, set up an intro flight, will only become visible if the person logged in to the device is either an instructor or holds a passenger carrying rating. So I'm just going to make the screen look a little bit more like a mobile phone, and then we'll jump right in, and I'm going to start by doing a solo flight. Now, because it's my personal device, it knows who I am, it fills me in as a P1, it simply asks me to select the aircraft that I'm going to fly. It's already picked up the launch default method as winch, so I'm just going to click continue, and there we go. There's a message there saying if I've got this far I should be good to go fly, so that's what we're actually going to do now. So we go back to the menu option, and it's at the bottom, it says go fly. We click on that and you'll find that my flight is in the list. Now, a caveat on this, you can only do one flight at a time. If I were to go back and try and set up another flight, it would say I can't do this, it's your personal device, you can only fly one at a time. So instructors can't set up like regimes of 3 flights for an individual trainee. It must be done one at a time. Apart from that, there are 2 options. The first is monitor launch, and that's where you can just click on that button, stick your phone in your pocket, and it will detect the movement of the aircraft. Now, there's a caveat on that, there always is. The caveat is you must be able to get the 4G signal in the aircraft with the cockpit closed, and once you've set it to monitor launch, you really need to be able to put it into a pocket or some kind of orifice where it is still able to get that mobile phone signal, that 4G signal. Otherwise it's not going to be able to signal back to free flight that it's actually launched. The caveat on that is that you need to have your phone set to about 2 minutes before it shuts down, otherwise it will switch off just before you're about to launch. The other one is the manual launch, which I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to click on that, and then it's going to put the aircraft in the air, and there you go, you can see the time up is there. Now you can do a manual launch, of course, before you close the canopy when you've got a good signal, and it's only going to make about a minute's difference to the air time, which is neither here nor there. And obviously if you're in a private aircraft, you're not going to be bothered too much about that, because you're only going to be paying for the launch fee. And here's that block message I talked about. I'm already active in a flight, it's my personal device, I can't do 2 at once, so it's just telling me to clear off. And time passes in the blink of an eye. Let's land the aircraft. And of course it disappears from view because we've ended the flight, and if we want to look where it is, we can go and look at flights landed, which you can always do on any day when you're flying, see what other people have done, compare yourself with your peer groups, and there it is, and there's the fee, £10 for the launch fee. I have 3 minutes in RK8, so that's all good. So now let's very quickly go through a intro flight or a trial lesson, call them what you will. Just click the item in the menu, and the first thing you'll see is a list of the trial lessons who are pre-booked on for the day. Find the one you want in the list, click on the little button icon, and click on prepare the flight record. Just say yes to that question because you want to get rid of the list, and there you are, it's all filled in for you. You are the P1, the P2 is a trial lesson. If you are going to use a motor glider, there's no real need to click on the self-launch tab, because it will automatically detect the fact that you're choosing a motor glider, and it will do that behind the scenes as soon as you click continue. But there's no reason why you can't do it. It's just a pointless waste of time, that's all. The P2 name obviously from the trial lesson voucher is built in there. Click continue, and away you go. Same message telling that you're good to go fly, so let's go and do that, and we'll just complete the exercise. Time passes once again, so we're just going to come back in now and land that flight, and then we'll go and see what's happened to the pricing. And there it is in the landed flights tab, all priced up correctly at £99 because it was an intro flight, so that will keep the treasurers happy, and everybody's good to move on to the next one, which is a training flight. Now I'm not going to do it, you've already seen it twice, just I'm going to talk through the differences. Because it's a personal device and it knows who's logged on, if the instructor is the person doing it, then of course it's going to put him as the P1 and ask him to enter the P2 in the aircraft. If the instructor is busy doing other things and he says to the trainee, okay, you do it, then it will detect the fact that it's a trainee, it will put the trainee in the P2 slot and ask the trainee to enter the instructor and the aircraft. So those are the only differences. After that, everything else the same. You go fly, you launch it, you land it, it will all get priced up and it will all appear in the log sheets for the day. If it's an error tow, then 2 extra boxes appear. They normally are filled in with the defaults of the day, but we haven't got any set up, so you just have to enter them manually. You need the tug ident and the tug pilot. For now I'm just going to go back to a winch and then click continue, and the job's done, it's finished. Now I'm not going to hang around, I'm just going to land it and accept the fact that it's going to be flagged as a launch failure. But that's no bad thing because it just shows you that it all works. So just a few topics to recap while we're on the subject. Number one, you must have 4G on the field for it to work. It does work on any smartphone, iPhones, Androids, that's all fine. Somebody must be responsible for actually setting up a flying sheet at the start of the day. From that point on, if the whole club's on board with it, then of course you can do away with the need for a laptop at the launch point or a duty clerk, although I suspect for quite a long time now you're going to need somebody who's got oversight of it, can look to make sure everything's going on okay. You might want to consider some dire consequences put in place for people who forget to land their aircraft and leave it up to the office admin person the next day to try and figure it all out. Something like, if you don't line yourself down, lads, we're going to charge you for a 2-hour flight. That's not my call, and in any case with a private aircraft it's going to make a real mockery of their aircraft logs if they start forgetting to do things. One of the things that's been suggested to me is start small, start with the motor gliders, since they seem to be a law unto themselves sometimes. It would make sense to let them get off and do their own thing. Keep an eye on them, make sure they're launching properly and landing properly, and then take it from there. But it certainly, I think, is the way forward, because as I said right at the start, nobody likes being a duty clerk.